Imagine walking into your living room after church. Your teenage son smiles at you. He asks you to close your eyes because he has a surprise. You smile, because what parent wouldn't trust their own child? Seconds later, a gunshot shatters the silence. Your wife collapses beside you. You're critically wounded, struggling to understand what has just happened. The person standing over you isn't a stranger or an intruder, it's your own son. Moments later, he leaves the house carrying the one thing he had wanted so desperately, a copy of Halo 3. It sounds like the plot of a psychological thriller, but this really happened. On October 20th, 2007, a quiet family in Ohio became the center of one of America's most disturbing juvenile crime cases. The story of Daniel Petric sparked a nationwide debate about video game addiction, isolation, and the limits of parental control. But was this really a murder committed over a video game? Or was the truth far more complicated? Today, we're uncovering the chilling true story of Daniel Petric, a teenager whose obsession, combined with isolation and a series of devastating choices, ended in a tragedy that destroyed his family forever. Daniel Petric was born into what many considered a loving and supportive home. His father, Mark Petrick, served as a minister, while his mother, Susan, devoted much of her time to caring for the family. Friends and neighbors described Daniel as intelligent, respectful, and generally well-behaved. Unlike many notorious juvenile offenders, Daniel did not grow up surrounded by violence or crime. There were no reports of gang involvement or a troubled upbringing. By all appearances, he had a stable home and parents who cared deeply about him. But sometimes, life changes in ways no one expects. In 2007, Daniel suffered a serious snowboarding accident that left him with severe injuries. During his recovery, he developed a painful staph infection that required surgery and forced him to spend months at home. For a teenager, losing the ability to attend school, play sports, or spend time with friends can be emotionally overwhelming. Daniel suddenly found himself isolated. Unable to enjoy the activities he once loved, he searched for another escape. That escape came in the form of an Xbox and a popular science fiction video game called Halo 3. At first, it was simply a way to pass the time. But over the following weeks, it became much more than entertainment. Millions of people around the world have played Halo 3 without harming anyone. Experts have repeatedly emphasized that video games alone do not cause violent crime. However, Daniel's relationship with gaming became increasingly unhealthy. He reportedly spent countless hours immersed in the virtual world. Days blended into nights as his focus shifted almost entirely to the game. Meals became interruptions. Family conversations became distractions. School and responsibilities faded into the background. His parents noticed the change. They saw their son withdrawing from the family and becoming increasingly angry whenever anyone interrupted his gaming sessions. Concerned for his well-being, they decided they had to intervene. Mark and Susan Petrick weren't trying to punish their son. They believed they were helping him. Hoping to break the cycle, Mark removed the Xbox and the Halo 3 game from Daniel's room. To make sure Daniel couldn't secretly retrieve them, he locked the game inside a household gun safe. To Mark, it was a simple parenting decision. He hoped some time away from gaming would help his son reconnect with reality. Instead, Daniel became increasingly resentful. Every day, it sat locked away, just out of reach. Instead of accepting his parents' decision, he began thinking about how to get it back. Eventually, he discovered where his father kept the keys to the safe. What happened next would forever change the Petrick family. On the evening of October 20th, Daniel quietly unlocked the gun safe. Inside was the Halo 3 game he wanted. Beside it was his father's handgun. Daniel took both. He then walked into the living room, where his parents were relaxing together. According to court testimony, Daniel asked them to close their eyes because he had a surprise for them. Daniel then opened fire. Susan Petrick suffered fatal injuries and died at the scene. Mark Petrick was seriously wounded but survived the attack. Authorities later said Daniel attempted to make the scene appear as though it were a murder-suicide before leaving the house with the video game. The plan quickly unraveled after Mark survived and was able to identify his son as the shooter. Daniel was arrested soon afterward. The case immediately attracted national attention. Investigators searched for answers. How could a teenager from what appeared to be a stable family commit such a shocking act? Was this simply a planned murder? Or had something gone terribly wrong inside Daniel's mind? The discovery of the Halo 3 game fueled headlines around the country. Others argued the issue was far more complex. Psychologists pointed to Daniel's prolonged isolation, his apparent dependence on gaming, and the emotional changes that followed his injury. But they also stressed an important point. No single factor could fully explain what had happened. When Daniel's trial began, the facts of the shooting were largely undisputed. Instead, the courtroom focused on why it happened. The defense argued that Daniel had become so consumed by his gaming addiction that it severely affected his judgment and ability to think rationally. Prosecutors disagreed. They argued that Daniel's actions demonstrated planning. He located the keys. He opened the safe. He armed himself. He persuaded his parents to close their eyes. He attempted to stage the crime scene afterward. According to prosecutors, these actions showed that Daniel understood the consequences of what he was doing. The court ultimately rejected the argument that video game addiction excused the crime. Daniel Petric was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving the minimum period required under Ohio law. For years, people continued debating the case. Some blamed violent video games. Others blamed addiction. Many experts urged caution. Research has found no evidence that playing violent video games alone causes someone to become a killer. Millions of people enjoy the same games without committing violent acts. Instead, experts generally view cases like Daniel Petric's as involving multiple contributing factors, including emotional struggles, isolation, family conflict, and individual mental health. The game itself was only one part of a much larger picture. Perhaps the most emotional chapter of this story came after the trial. Despite surviving the attack that took his wife's life, Mark Petrick chose a path many people struggle to understand. He forgave his son. Over the years, Mark continued visiting Daniel in prison. His decision was rooted in his Christian faith and his belief that forgiveness, while incredibly difficult, was more meaningful than living with hatred. For many observers, this became one of the most unforgettable parts of the entire case. Not because it erased the tragedy. Nothing could ever do that. But because it showed the extraordinary complexity of love, grief, and forgiveness. The Daniel Petric case is often remembered as the Halo murder, but reducing it to that simple headline misses the larger lesson. This is not a story proving that video games create killers. It is a story about what can happen when isolation, obsession, and deteriorating judgment are left unchecked. Healthy hobbies become dangerous only when they replace real relationships, responsibilities, and balance. Technology can entertain us, teach us, and connect us, but it should never become our entire world. For the Petrick family, one terrible night changed everything forever. And decades later, the case remains a sobering reminder that behind every sensational headline is a real family whose lives can never be put back together. If there's one lesson to take from this tragedy, it's this: no game, no obsession, and no possession is ever worth more than the people who love us. Because unlike the virtual world, real life offers no reset button, no extra lives, and no second chance.